This happened a week ago. I'm Emma, 32, and I'm a freelance photographer. I decided to get away for a bit to find some peace after a bunch of hectic assignments. I've camped before, so I thought I knew what I was doing. The campsite was deep in the woods, a secluded place with tall pines and a gentle stream. It was so quiet, way different from city life, and I thought this would be the perfect spot to recharge. But I've never stopped thinking about what happened. I set up my tent and decided to take some pictures. The view around me was beautiful. Everything was peaceful. As night fell, I crawled into my sleeping bag, ready to get some rest. That's when I heard it. A soft giggle coming from somewhere in the woods. I thought it might be another group of campers, so I tried to ignore it. I listened to the sounds of the stream instead. The next morning, I felt a little uneasy. I didn't see anyone else around, but I brushed it off. I took my camera out again and wandered around the area, snapping shots of the trees and the light filtering through the branches. But as the days went by, I still heard the laughter. It was different this time, closer. I started to wonder if maybe there were kids nearby. Then I noticed something strange. My camera was acting up. I found a few photos on it that I definitely didn't take. They showed blurry images of what looked like children. I got this weird feeling in my stomach I couldn't shake. Who took those pictures? I was starting to feel nervous, but I convinced myself it was just my imagination. By the third night, I was sitting in my tent, listening to the laughter again. It felt like it was right outside. I peeked out, but there was nothing, just the trees and shadows. My heart raced. I went back to my sleeping bag. I tried to listen instead, to make sense of this. Maybe the campers were playing games or something. It made sense, right? But as the giggles continued, I felt more isolated. They were getting so close, and it didn't sound like fun anymore, more like something was watching me. Then the footsteps started. Tiny, quick steps that danced around the perimeter of my campsite. I could hear them, but when I looked, no one was there. I was all alone. The laughter turned into whispering, and I felt chills going down my spine. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to pack everything in the dark. Finally, I decided to leave the next morning. I thought maybe getting away could quiet my mind. When I walked back to my car, though, I felt like something was trailing me. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks, but I kept looking over my shoulder. As I drove off, I wondered if the children were real. Did I really hear giggling, or was it all in my head? I can't help but feel something watched me out there. Then I asked myself, what if I wasn't alone after all? The sun was barely rising when I got back to my apartment. After the chaos of the camping trip, the city felt almost like a refuge. I dropped my gear by the door, skin still crawling from the memories. But peaceful moments don't last. My laptop buzzed to life, and I hesitated before opening it. I needed to review the photos I had taken. Maybe seeing them would help make sense of everything. I scrolled through shots of the trees, the stream, and my tent nestled in the woods. Everything looked normal until I got to those eerie photos. The blurry images of what had to be children were inexplicable. They looked like they had been taken so close to me, and yet I didn't remember being near any kids. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I clicked to enlarge one of the images. That's when I saw it, a flicker of movement in the background. My heart raced as I squinted at the screen. It was hard to make out, but there was something there, a shape. I wasn't sure, but it looked like a small figure lurking behind the trees, peeking out at me. Panic started bubbling in my chest. Was it one of the kids, or something else entirely? I pushed my chair away and stood up. I needed air. I stepped out onto my balcony, taking deep breaths. The morning light made me feel a little better, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I jumped. It was a text from Sarah, my best friend. She wanted to catch up over coffee. I agreed, needing to distract myself. When I arrived at the cafe, I told her about the trip. I wanted to laugh it off, to pretend it was just a weird adventure, but the unease lingered. As I recounted the giggles and the footsteps, her eyes widened. "Emma, you really should have left earlier," she said, concern clouding her features. "I know," I admitted, biting my lip. "But I thought it was just my imagination. I thought it would pass." We finished our coffee, and Sarah suggested we take a hike together next weekend. It seemed like a good idea until I remembered the woods. I didn't want to go back there, but I also felt like I needed to confront whatever had happened. Later that night, as I tried to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that the woods still had a grip on me, pulling at my thoughts. The whispering and the laughter felt like they hadn't truly left. I turned on my bedside lamp, grabbed my camera, and started reviewing the images again. That's when I noticed something new in one picture. A faint orange glow around the edges, something I hadn't seen before. It wasn't a sunset light or the reflection of a flashlight. My heart sank. It looked almost like a fire. Then I remembered how dry the forest had been. Fire would mean danger. It could explain the giggling. Maybe something had happened out there, something I didn't understand. The sense of urgency washed over me. I had to go back. Something was waiting for me in those woods. The next morning, I woke up with a strange heaviness in my chest. The decision to return to the woods seemed inevitable, and as I got dressed, I tried to swallow my apprehension. I packed my camera, a flashlight, and extra batteries. This time, I wouldn't be caught off guard. I drove out to the campsite, and the air felt charged with anticipation. The closer I got, the more the memory of that feeling of being watched came flooding back. I parked my car and stepped into the woods, taking a deep breath to steady myself. The trees loomed tall and silent, the sun filtering through the branches, creating strange shadows on the ground. I felt like they were closing in on me. Once at my tent, I set up my camera and began checking the surrounding area for signs. I kept looking for that orange glow, wondering if it was a mark of something more sinister. As I walked towards the stream, I felt that same sensation of being watched. I shook my head, telling myself I was being paranoid. But then I heard it, a faint giggle, high-pitched and playful, echoing through the trees. My heart raced, chill creeping up my spine. It was just like before. I followed the sound, trying to convince myself it was nothing, that I was being foolish. I snapped the lens cap off my camera, gripping it tightly. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. Silence answered back. Then I heard the giggle again, closer this time. I turned, eyes darting from tree to tree. That's when I found it, a small clearing I didn't remember. In the center was a ring of scorched earth. The charred remains of logs suggested that a fire had recently burned here. The orange glow from my photo flashed in my mind. And there, dotted around the clearing, were small toys. A doll, a toy truck, and a rusted tin can that looked like it had been buried long ago. My stomach twisted. Why were they here? It felt wrong. I knelt down, examining the toys closely. Just then, an icy gust of wind swept through the clearing, chilling me to the bone. I stood up quickly, heart pounding. That giggle erupted again, this time ringing around me, echoing eerily. I whipped around, searching for its source, but there was nothing there. I stumbled back, almost tripping over my own feet. I needed to get out. As I turned to leave, I caught a faint motion from the corner of my eye. A form, small and shadowy, darting between the trees. "Wait!" I shouted, instinct taking over. But the shape was gone. I stood frozen, staring into the dense thicket, hoping to see something, anything. Breathing hard, I began to back away slowly, my instincts screaming at me to leave. I was almost out of the clearing when I heard it again, a whisper. Not a giggle this time, but a low, drawn-out mumble. I couldn't make out the words, but it felt like it was calling to me. I turned and bolted in the opposite direction, sprinting toward my tent, panic fueling my flight. When I finally reached my gear, I fumbled for my keys. The whisper faded into the rustle of the leaves, leaving me alone, shaking and uncertain. I had come looking for answers, but all I found was a new layer of confusion. And lurking in the back of my mind was the knowledge that whatever had played with me in the woods was still there, watching, waiting. I barely slept that night. Shadows danced near my tent, playing tricks on my mind. Each time a branch cracked outside, I jolted awake, heart racing. I was haunted by that laughter, the whisper that seemed to float through the air just for me. Morning came slowly, light filtering through the fabric of my tent. I forced myself out and brewed some coffee, hoping the caffeine would clear my head. The woods were impossibly quiet, as if the trees were holding their breath, waiting. I set up my camera again, determined to document whatever I found. Today, I decided to explore deeper into the woods. I followed the stream where I had first heard the giggles. As I walked, I kept glancing back over my shoulder. It was ridiculous, this fear of the unseen. I reminded myself it might be just the sounds of nature, a trick of the wind. When I reached a spot where the water pooled, I knelt to take some pictures. That's when I noticed something strange on the opposite bank. A small, muddy footprint, like a child's, but too small to be real. My curiosity battled with my instinct to retreat. Ignoring my better judgment, I stepped closer to the edge, peering into the water. That's when I noticed more. A series of footprints leading away from the bank, deeper into the woods. My mind raced. Why would there be tracks in such a secluded area? I snapped a few pictures of the prints, but couldn't shake the feeling that I was trespassing on something sacred. The whispers flooded back to me, and I shuddered. I stood, ready to go back, when I heard a rustle behind me. I froze, every muscle tense. Slowly, I turned. There, partially obscured by a tree, was that small shadow again. Panic gripped me. This time I wasn't shouting. I decided it was best to slip away quietly. But as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of movement. The shape was darting behind. The trees, like a flicker of light. "Who's there?" I called out again, trying to sound braver than I felt. No answer, only silence. Then I saw it again, a swift flash of orange. My blood ran cold. I remembered the glow from my photographs. This wasn't simply a child playing hide and seek. It felt much darker, something almost deceitful. I hesitated, heart pounding in my chest. What was this thing? Why was it leading me deeper into the woods? Before I could process what to do next, a loud snap echoed behind me. I turned sharply, half expecting to find someone lurking. Instead, I saw a tree branch, long and heavy, crashing to the ground. My breath quickened. I had to get out. I darted back the way I came, urgency fueling my legs. I could feel something trailing me, lurking just out of sight. Finally back at my campsite, my heart raced as I slammed the tent flaps shut. I felt trapped, like something was just outside, waiting for me to let my guard down. And then, from outside, I heard it again. A giggle, softer now, but unmistakable. I peered out, half expecting to see a small figure waiting for me. Instead, all I found were the trees, swaying gently in the breeze. But I knew I wasn't alone. Something was still out there, and it was playing a game I didn't want to be part of. I couldn't shake the feeling. I had to leave. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows once more. I knew I had to act quickly before darkness fell. But as my hands shook over my backpack, ready to flee, a new thought struck me. What if it wasn't just a game? What if I was being led to something? That's when I noticed it. Something nestled near the base of a tree, marked by the fading light. I stared, unable to look away. I took a cautious step closer, heart pounding louder than ever. The object became clearer as I approached. A small wooden box, carved with intricate designs. It looked weathered, too old for the woods around me. I felt drawn to it, as if something inside was whispering my name. I knelt down, brushing away the dirt and leaves that clung to it. The carvings were unlike anything I had ever seen. They seemed to represent creatures and symbols that twisted together in impossible ways. I hesitated, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. The woods around me felt alive, watching. I glanced back towards my campsite, wondering if I should just grab my things and leave. But my curiosity held me captive. I opened the box, anticipation tinged with fear. Inside, I found a collection of small, colorful stones. Each one glimmered in the fading light, as though they held a secret. I picked one up, a deep sapphire blue that shimmered even in the shadow. As my fingers brushed its surface, an electric chill shot through my arm. I dropped it, back into the box, heart racing. Then, before I even had time to process what I was seeing, I noticed something else at the bottom, a crumpled piece of paper. My hands trembled as I reached for it. Scanning the words, I found a faded drawing. It depicted a figure, small and timid, much like the shadow I had seen. And it was surrounded by those very same footprints I had found earlier. Suddenly, the giggles echoed in my ears again, closer now, sharper. I slammed the box shut and bolted to my feet. I had to get out. I couldn't stay here any longer. But as I turned to run, something caught my eye from the corner of my vision. A flicker of orange darted between the trees, a flash of whatever was watching me. I stumbled backward, heart racing. It was too quick, too erratic. It didn't feel real. I darted back toward the tents, adrenaline firing in my veins. Each step felt heavy, as though the ground tugged at me, urging me to stay. I reached my campsite, collapsing against my tent. I was breathing hard, every instinct telling me to pack up and leave. But the thought of that box and what it contained gnawed at me. What was that figure? Why were those footprints leading away from it? My head swam as the shadows lengthened around me. I scanned the perimeter, searching for any sign of movement. But the woods were eerily silent again, swallowing any noise I made. Then came a sudden sharp knock on the tent, a distinct sound that shattered the quiet. Panic surged through me. I pressed myself against the fabric, heart thundering. I wanted to scream, to question who was there, but I knew the answer was not as simple as a person lurking in the dark. Whatever I had stumbled into was something far worse. Another knock resounded, this time louder, more insistent. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to see what it was, had to understand. In that moment, I was done being a spectator in this twisted game. With shaking hands, I unzipped the tent flap, ready to confront whatever was out there. The flap opened, and I braced myself. The chill hit me like a wave, and my breath hung in the air, visible and shaky. Nothing stood there, just the dark woods, silent and watching. I stepped out slowly, the crunch of twigs underfoot loud in the stillness. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting strange shadows. I looked around, but there was no sign of life, nothing that would explain the knocking. Then I heard it again, a giggle, soft and playful, echoing through the trees. It felt like it was coming from behind me, deeper into the woods. I turned sharply, scanning the darkness. Fear clawed at my throat, but curiosity tugged harder. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaky but determined. The answer came as another giggle, this one closer than before. It sent a jolt of ice down my spine. I hesitated, debating whether to follow the sound or retreat to the safety of my tent. Something urged me forward, my feet moving without direction. So I took a step deeper into the trees, the underbrush grasping at my legs. Ahead, I spotted a dim glow. Was it a fire? I shut my eyes for a brief moment, trying to remember my surroundings. There weren't any other campers nearby. At least, I had thought so. The glow pulsed softly like a heartbeat, drawing me in, and then faded again. I faltered, but pressed on. The pulsing grew louder, more insistent, echoing in my chest. Soon, I found myself standing in a small clearing. In the center, a circle of those colorful stones from the box glimmered. They lay arranged meticulously, each one glowing faintly. The orange flicker reappeared, now swirling among the stones. It danced and twisted, and as it did, a figure stepped into the light. It was small, almost childlike, and its features were indistinct, more like a shadow than a person. It turned to face me, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me. I wanted to flee, but I was frozen, caught in the moment. The entity raised a tiny hand, and the scratching sound I'd heard before filled the air. Not laughter, but a soft insistence, almost like it wanted me to come closer. "No," I whispered, taking a step back, but the creature didn't move. Instead, it pointed toward the stones, and I felt the heat of its gaze boring into me. I turned to run, panic flooding my veins. But as I did, everything went dark. The glow vanished as quickly as it had appeared, swallowed by the shadows. My heart raced, and I stumbled, nearly losing my footing. The giggles returned, taunting me as I bolted in the opposite direction, the trees blurring past me. I crashed through the underbrush, desperate for the comfort of my tent. I could feel it watching as I fled. Finally, I burst back into the clearing of my camp. I slammed the tent flap shut, fumbling with the zipper. My breaths came in ragged gasps as I pressed myself against the fabric, eyes wide. What had I seen? Who or what was that little figure? As I fought to calm my racing heart, a new sound broke the silence, an eerie whisper that sent chills racing down my spine. "Find me," it echoed around me, reverberating in my mind. The shadows seemed to close in, and I knew my night was far from over. I had awakened something, and now it wanted to play. The shadows outside the tent felt alive, shifting and twisting as though they were trying to reach me. I pressed my back against the fabric, trying to convince myself it had all been a terrible nightmare. But then the whisper came again, more urgent this time. "Find me." I squeezed my eyes shut, ignoring the tremble in my fingers as I clutched at the zipper. Taking slow, shaky breaths, I fought the rising tide of panic threatening to swallow me whole. I had to figure out what was happening. I opened the flap just enough to peek outside. The moon hung high, casting a silvery glow across the campsite. I scanned the woods, heart pounding in time with my pulse, but there was no sign of the glowing figure or those colorful stones. Just the woods, I told myself, trying to steady my racing thoughts. I was alone, completely alone. But then a rustle broke the silence, coming from the corner of the camp. My breath caught in my throat. I slowly turned my head. There it was again, a shadow darting between the trees. I needed to know what it was. Maybe it would explain everything. "Hello?" My voice was barely a whisper, but it seemed to slice through the night. And then, like a curtain drawn back, the sound returned. A faint echo of laughter, like children playing hide and seek. It sent an unsettling chill down my spine. I didn't want to go, but my feet seemed to move of their own accord. I unzipped the tent fully this time and stepped cautiously back into the night. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I couldn't go back now. I needed answers. The laughter led me into the trees again, deeper into the woods. Every branch snapped underfoot like a warning. I could feel the weight of the darkness around me, thick and suffocating, pressing in close. I peered into the blackness, searching for the source of the laughter. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a small clearing, and my heart sank. In the center lay a pile of those colorful stones, just as I had seen them before. But now they were dull, lifeless, no glow, no flicker. I felt unease settle in my gut. "Why is this here?" I muttered to myself. Just as I turned to leave, a flash of movement caught my eye. I spun around to see a familiar silhouette emerging. It was the same shadow child from before, but different now, more defined, more sinister. "Find me," it whispered, but this time it seemed angry, each word punctuated with a sharp gust of wind that tore through the clearing. I felt seized by terror, all breath leaving my lungs. Instinct kicked in, and I turned to run back the way I came. But the forest felt foreign and alive with whispers, branches clawing at me like fingers as I dashed through the trees. I dodged low-hanging limbs and thick roots, fear propelling me forward. But as I reached the edge of the clearing, something cold wrapped around my ankle. I fell hard, crashing to the ground. Panic swelled within me as I struggled to free myself, only to feel the shadows pulling me deeper into their grasp. "Find me," the voice persisted, now echoing with a force that threatened to pull me apart. Suddenly, the laughter swelled around me, ringing louder and louder. I couldn't escape it. Then, amidst the chaos, a sharp crack broke through. The sound was like thunder, followed by silence so absolute it made my ears ring. In that moment, I realized I was not only being hunted, I was being drawn into something much darker. I felt the shadows shift around me, and then everything went dark, once again swallowed by a veil of night. Everything seemed to freeze. One moment I was being dragged into darkness, and the next I was lying on the cool forest floor, gasping for air. I blinked, trying to understand where I was. The clearing was gone, replaced by an endless stretch of trees. They loomed around me, tall and twisted, their branches reaching out like crooked fingers. Panic filled me again. What happened? I thought. I pushed myself up, scanning my surroundings. The laughter was muffled now, replaced by an eerie silence that felt thick. I felt disoriented. "Find me." The whisper came from somewhere nearby, but it sounded distant, almost mocking. I turned my head wildly, searching for the source. Shadows danced between the trees, but I couldn't distinguish reality from illusion. Was I losing my mind? I stumbled to my feet, wiping dirt from my hands. My heartbeat thudded in my ears as I took a cautious step forward, feeling the damp earth shift beneath my feet. I remembered the stones, the beautiful stones. I needed to see if they were nearby, if they would make sense of this mess. I started walking, each step tentative. Suddenly, a shimmer caught my eye through a gap in the trees. I moved toward it, almost entranced. As I neared, I felt a deep sense of dread. What if I wasn't supposed to find it? Just then, I emerged into another clearing, but this one was filled with bright light. My heart raced as I recognized the stones, radiating color in stark contrast to the darkness I had just escaped. They pulsed with energy, drawing me closer. But something was off. The laughter returned, sharper this time, taunting me. I hesitated. Should I touch them? I wondered. My curiosity battled with the growing anxiety in my chest. Before I could decide, a chill swept through the air, freezing me in place. It was as if the shadows themselves had turned to watch me. I felt it then, a presence behind me. I dared to glance over my shoulder, but the moment I turned, the light from the stones flickered violently like a dying flame. In the blink of an eye, the forest transformed. Instead of vibrant hues, everything shifted to gray, drained of life. I gasped, my breath hitching. The presence was closer now, and the whisper echoed all around me. Find me. I couldn't tell if it was an invitation or a demand. My heart hammered as I looked back at the stones. They were dulling, the colors fading like a forgotten memory. "No, come back!" I shouted, my voice swallowed by the silence. Panic surged again. I had to leave. I turned, sprinting away from the clearing. The trees seemed to close in around me, narrow paths appearing and disappearing, leading me deeper into the unknown. Just then, a sharp scream pierced the air, freezing me in my tracks. It was a sound of pure terror. I squinted ahead, heart racing. Was I imagining things? I strained to listen, but the forest was suddenly too loud, snapping branches and rustling leaves, echoing with familiar laughter. It was coming from all directions. And then I saw it. Just at the edge of my vision, a flickering light danced like fireflies. "Find me," it echoed once more, sharp as a blade. I stood frozen with fear, realizing whatever I was chasing, whatever was behind this, wasn't finished with me yet. I had to make a choice: run or find out what waited in the darkness. I took a deep breath and moved forward. I pushed through the dense underbrush, my mind racing. The trees whispered above me, bending with the wind, or maybe it was something else. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. I had to find that light. Maybe it would lead me back to clarity, or at least away from whatever darkness was chasing me. As I walked, the light flickered again, dancing just out of reach. I quickened my pace, adrenaline pumping. What if it was a trick? What if it led me deeper into the unknown? But my feet moved of their own accord, driven by a hunger for understanding. Branch after branch snapped beneath my feet, echoing loudly in the thick silence. My breathing quickened. The thrill of the chase had turned my fear into something else. I was getting closer. I could feel it. Then, everything changed. The light dimmed abruptly, plunging me into darkness. I stumbled, arms flailing to grasp anything solid. The whisper returned, louder now, wrapping around me. "Find me." It was a command, not an invitation. I was being lured deeper into a trap. With every step, I felt heavier, as if the very air around me thickened. I willed myself to move, but my legs felt like lead. Then I caught a glimpse of it again, brighter this time, a warm glow seeping through the cracks of the trees. I rushed towards it, almost blind with need. When I finally broke through another cluster of trees, I gasped. Before me lay a small, shallow pond, its surface shimmering with moonlight. But it wasn't just moonlight. The stones from before were spread around its edge, casting a radiant glow that illuminated the clearing. They pulsed softly, almost rhythmically, as if breathing. I felt drawn to them. Maybe they held answers. As I approached, confusion swirled in my mind. Why were they here? What did they mean? I reached out, fingers hovering over the smooth surface of a bright blue stone. The moment I touched it, a jolt of energy shot through my hand, spiraling up my arm. "No!" I pulled back, feeling the surge of power flow away. It left an eerie silence in its wake. The laughter returned, this time echoing clear and taunting. I stumbled back, heart racing, scanning the clearing. That's when I saw it. Standing at the other edge of the pond, a figure cloaked in shadows. Its presence writhed like mist, shifting form but never settling. I felt the weight of its gaze upon me, cold and unyielding. The figure pointed a long finger towards the stones, and the laughter doubled, fiendish, mocking, like the hollow echoes of a distant nightmare. "Come play," it murmured, the voice a disturbing blend of childlike innocence and malice. The temperature dropped like a stone. I realized with horror that I was being given a choice again. Fight to break free or answer the seductive beckoning of the darkness. A chill coursed through me as another voice broke through, this one louder, desperate. "Don't listen!" My pulse quickened, fear battling curiosity. I scanned the trees for the voice's owner, but all I found was the figure standing still, its smile widening as if savoring my turmoil. I could feel the shadows creeping up on me again. I had to move. I turned away from the pond, eyes fixed ahead, driven by survival. But then a pulse of light caught my attention. The stones beckoned me once more, and my hand twitched, torn between two futures. As I took a step, I felt a rush of wind behind me, dark and fierce, pushing me forward. Then everything went dark. I woke up gasping, tangled in the fabric of my sleeping bag, as if it had become a cocoon. It took me a moment to gather myself and realize I was back in my tent. The fading light outside told me it was dusk again. I sat up, heart pounding in my chest, replaying the night's chaos. Had it all been a dream? Surely it couldn't be real. But the whiff of smoke lingering in the air told me otherwise. I unzipped the tent flap slowly and peeked outside, bracing myself for whatever lay ahead. The campsite was still quiet, eerily so. The trees loomed overhead like sentinels, casting long, menacing shadows across the ground. I had nowhere to go, nowhere to hide from the haunting whispers that had choked my breath when I ran. Tentatively, I stepped out. As I moved, each crack of a twig sounded like thunder, echoing in the stillness. I scanned the perimeter, expecting to see the shadow figure or the small voice that had beckoned me just moments ago. Nothing. Just silence. I considered my options. I could flee right now, pack my belongings and race to my car. Or I could confront this restless energy pulsing through the woods, try to make sense of the malevolence that had coiled around my mind. Treading carefully into the trees felt like diving into the unknown. Choice was agonizing, but it seemed the woods wanted me to stay and play. I wouldn't let fear have the final say. I squared my shoulders and walked deeper into the forest, hoping I might find answers, or at least a way to end this madness. As I moved cautiously, I became attuned to something shifting in the air. The giggles returned, brittle against the backdrop of silence. I squinted into the hazy twilight, that same glow flickering somewhere ahead. I needed to see what it was, to uncover the source of all this unease. The light twisted and danced beyond a thicket. Mustering every shred of courage, I stepped forward, pushing through the branches. The clearing opened into something I wasn't prepared for. There stood the small pond once more, shimmering with the magical glow of the stones surrounding it. They pulsed gently, almost rhythmically, as though they were alive. But I wasn't alone. That figure was there too, nearer than before, lurking just at the edge of my peripheral vision. I could feel it, cold and watchful, as if it were both predator and protector of this twisted domain. Its absence of detail only amplified my dread. "Find me," it whispered again, a sweet, honeyed tone dipped in malice. Panic flooded my gut as I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, rippling in sync with the stones. This was a moment of reckoning, a silent ultimatum buried within a game neither of us could escape. Ignoring what my instincts screamed, I took a step closer to the pond. Something held me captive, drawing me toward the stones with their soft glow. If I could just touch them once more, perhaps I'd unlock the truth behind this torment. But the figure shifted and coiled closer, the air thickening as shadows emerged from it like tendrils reaching toward me. "Are you afraid?" Its voice came out as a taunt now, a dissonance of childlike giggles twisted with something sinister. "I want to know," I shouted defensively, recognizing the challenge in its tone, fighting against the creeping despair curling around my heart. The grin on its shadowy face widened impossibly. In that moment, I remembered the box, the toys, the dreams. Did they belong to it, or were they remnants of lost children who came before me? As if sensing my thoughts, the entity drifted away, gesturing toward the pond. In that instant, the laughter intensified, echoing through the trees. I felt the very fabric of the ground beneath me dissolve into a whirl of colors before plunging into a haze of black. The ambient sounds ceased, leaving an eerie emptiness gnawing at my sanity. I was adrift, untethered. And then I understood. The stones, the laughter, it was all a ruse. They were not meant to illuminate truth, but to ensnare those who dared to seek. I had stepped willingly into a cocoon woven from shadows, and now I was a part of its nightmare. When clarity burst through the shadows, I was back by the pond. The stones now lay still, almost lifeless. It was as if time had folded on itself, or perhaps this was yet another iteration of the same torment. I had one final choice: the stones or the untold darkness that surrounded me. I hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. Standing before me was the glimmering thread of fate, and I did not intend to unravel it. So I turned, not to the stones, but back toward the thicket, back toward the unseen edges of the woods where the laughter receded. I didn't need to find answers anymore. I just needed to escape. As I pushed into the brush, the whispers faded behind me, merging with the wind. The specter lingered, but it lost its grip, its hold waning as I moved toward the entrance of the woods, a path now visible, almost glowing with an electric charge. I finally burst from the underbrush and back into the world where the sun was setting, transformed into a blazing orange glow. The campsite felt like a distant memory, yet its shadows still loomed in my mind. I could hear that laughter lingering, faintly echoing wherever I went. I drove away from the forest that night, but its whispers haunted my dreams. I still don't know what those figures were, or if they were remnants of lost souls or simply my own trepidation manifesting. Some things, after all, never find closure. I knew one thing for sure: a part of me had merged with that darkness, and it was a piece I could never escape. I eventually moved away, but sometimes I still glance back toward the woods, real or imagined, to wonder if they are waiting for me, playing a game of their own design, outside the reach of the known world.